You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
So happy you could join me again today on this second part, or part two, of our Cabral HouseCalls. We answered yesterday's questions from the community. That was on episode 827, and today we have new questions coming in. And each and every Saturday and Sunday, I try to answer your questions to the best of my ability. My job, I look at it as trying to be that first place to get you started, to look at what maybe facets your practitioner or yourself or anyone else, anything that you've read before might have been missing or may not have just correlated. And if I can share some of the 250,000 plus appointments that I've been able to do with my team over essentially the last almost 20 years, not quite 20 years yet, a couple more years, then I want to be able to do that with you. So on yesterday's show, I did share with you how I want to be able to answer as many of your questions as possible. And that is why I'm going to, without further ado, jump right into today's questions. We've got some exciting ones. Really looking forward to tackling those. I think you'll find them all pretty interesting. So let's get right into it. Stephanie's up first today. She writes in, "Hello, my husband and I have listened to your podcast for several years. I, as a personal trainer, use A Man's Guide to Muscle and Strength to train all my weight loss clients. As a nutritionist and health coach, I now run your organic acids test, food sensitivity test, and hair tissue mineral analysis recommended, also with all of your protocols. I do a lot of research and I've spent countless hours and days watching videos and reading articles about the organic acids test. I know more about biochemistry and the Krebs cycle than I ever thought I would. In fact, I'm downright obsessed with the tests. However, when I run my own tests, it was determined that all of my nutritional markers were fine except vitamin C, which was low, and B5, which was high. Pantothenic acid is not one of the vitamins whose high range indicates a deficiency. My question to you is this: would it be possible that my B5 is high because it is literally passing through me without being absorbed at all? I was off the chart for Candida and oxalic or citric acids, which I thought were off, which I think was off due to a calcium deficiency." Got it. Okay. "I found that my pH was slightly or definitely acidic. I have begun taking your CalMag Complete, and now my pH is back to normal. I eat a lot of spinach, but it turns out a high oxalate food like spinach does not provide much calcium and, in fact, may contribute to my decrease in calcium absorption. Would the CBO protocol be appropriate for me to rid myself of Candida? Furthermore, should I run a metals test to determine whether or not I've built up of metals? Since I know Candida can bind to metals in the body. Sorry to be so long-winded. Thank you, Ayubowan." Ayubowan. All right. So, Stephanie, we can answer those questions for you. It sounds like you are the epitome of just basically ascending the health career ladder. I mean, it sounds like you've done amazing things. Personal trainer, nutritionist, health coach. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. I'm so glad that you're doing that. And I hope one day to welcome you into our health coaching community. Come this September, we will be launching our level 1, and then in the new year, our level 2 and 3 of our health coaches, where we will actually be, people have asked me, how do I find a health coach that does what you do around me? Because maybe they want to meet with them in person. Obviously, we do Skype and we meet with people, obviously, just through video chat all over the world. But a lot of people like to see people in person, or, maybe they just want to connect with someone else, which is always a great thing. I have no issues with that at all. So what I want to do this fall, which I haven't mentioned it yet, is we'll be listing everyone that goes through our certification all across the country and all across the world. So we'll have so many people from Europe and Australia and the UK and Canada and the US. Those are all the people that I know for sure have emailed us many, many times asking, when are you coming out with your certification? And the thing is, we just want to make it great. Like, we could put it out next month, but that doesn't mean we can make it great. And so that's just never been my style. I'm not in a rush, not at this point, kind of where I'm at right now. I want to be able to serve to the best of my ability. And I want to be able to always teach in a way that I believe serves. So if I feel my calling is to be a teacher and to teach to whether it's wellness clients, whether it's to teach other doctors, whether it's to teach health practitioners, however I can be teaching about taking the best of Eastern medicine and the best of Western medicine, not pharmaceutical based, but Western medicine in terms of lab testing, I want to be able to do that. And I just feel the certification is the next level. And so Stephanie, like people like yourself, I would love to be able to promote. And so that's the nice thing is we'll have a practitioners page. And when people ask me for a good practitioner name, I will simply send them to this page of all the practitioners that have gone through our protocol. And I mean, I'm not talking negatively about other organizations, but what I want to say is that we are an organization that does, meaning like this is what we do in our practice. We're not developing an organization just for the sake of creating a certification, meaning like we do it in our practice and we want to be able to then spread that net wider, meaning like myself and my health coaches right now, we can't even keep up with all the applicants coming into the practice like we want to, and we do. We work with people every single day, but I would love to be able to share those people that need help with everyone all across the world. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, to answer your questions, I want to give you the exact answers. So one thing about the organic acids test is that it's 75 biomarkers and no one of them can be read individually as, oh, I have this or, oh, I have that. When you practice functional medicine, it is as much of an art as it is a science, which means that the art of functional medicine is looking at the person's story, looking at all of the other numbers, looking at where they're at in their life in terms of stress and eating, exercise, rest, sleep, all of these things, and then understanding what these markers say about the person. Remember, we are not machines or robots. When we try to treat ourselves that way, it will always go sideways. So, first things first, if you have high Candida that's off the chart, understand that a lot of times high oxalic acid markers or oxalates are from Candida-based waste as well. So yes, spinach and chocolate and blueberries and beets. What else is high in oxalates? They're not all coming to me all at once. Coffee, all of those things can be high in oxalates, okay? But I've never really seen, now, yes, there are a couple people with oxalate-based issues, but for the most part, most people have oxalate-based issues because of a high HPA axis dysregulation, so higher levels of cortisol, which is going to affect calcium being pulled in the bloodstream and binding to things like oxalates. But even bigger than that is that on organic acids test, we're taught, and I actually studied under Dr. Waller. I wish I could, literally, sometimes when I do a podcast, names and math, I just blank on. That part of the brain is not being used at all. Dr. Kurt Waller, brilliant guy, very, very smart guy. So that's why I studied under, and many, many, many phone calls with Dr. Waller asking him, what does this mean? And then I went to his seminars, and then I studied, obviously, this in depth with, again, blanking on names, Dr. Bill, I want to say Walsh, but again, I could be confused, through Great Plains Laboratory. Anyway, doesn't matter who exactly I studied under, but high oxalic acid can also mean waste markers from yeast. So that has to be our bottom line. Remember, we're looking for root cause. So for you, we need to take care of the Candida first. Don't worry as much about the spinach, unless you are someone with joint pain, unless you are someone with gout or any type of thing like that going on. I would wipe out the yeast and bacterial overgrowth in the gut first. Now, in terms of your B5 being high, it does not mean that it's running through you and not being used, but it certainly could mean that you are taking in more B5 than your body needs. Okay, so vitamin B5 is pantothenic acid, and you want to think of it this way. The lab range for vitamin B5 always is a smaller amount. It's less than 5.4, okay? So think about it, like B6 can go up to 26. It can be a little bit higher. So what we're talking about is pantothenic acid. Is your body getting what it needs? And if it's a little on the higher side, well, then it is. And there'll be a little bit more excretion. It just means, though, that you are excreting the additional B5 that your body doesn't need. And since it's a water-soluble vitamin, I don't see it necessarily being harmful to you. Now, you can look at all the harmful effects of B5. I believe that might have already been one of my super nutrients of the week. And you'll see neurological-based issues if, for whatever reason, you take your B vitamins too high. I mean, again, you have to get quite a bit. Usually most people can tolerate 50 milligrams to 100 milligrams of something like a B5. Now, there are actual B5 vitamins that go up to like 300 milligrams or more. And a lot of people use them when they have adrenal-based issues. And that's because B5 is a great utilizer for adrenal-based energy. It's utilized for making more hormones in the body, and it's being used for creating energy from carbohydrates. In my opinion, I probably wouldn't be overly worried about it, but again, you can check on that. And then the vitamin C as well. You probably have increased vitamin C needs. You certainly sound like a busy person, always on the go, and the mind's always moving as well. So hopefully that helps. All right. Next up is Linda. Linda's asking, hello, I'm interested in coming up with a nutrition plan and would like to figure out if I have a food intolerance. Your application form is not secure, and so I do not feel comfortable providing that level of information online. Please let me know if there is a written form I can pick up to fill out instead. If so, I can speak with someone by phone or preferably set up an appointment. Thank you, Linda. All right, Linda, this is not the place to ask that question. I'm happy to answer it, but unfortunately, you wrote this on February 17th. So this is all for the questions. It says right on that page. These questions are for Dr. Cabral only to answer. If it's an office-based question, a scheduling question, a where can I get tracking information for my package question, all of that's at support@stephencabral.com. support@drcabraldetox.com. Any of the support emails is great. So that's that. You can also ask it at cabralsupportgroup.com. And that's a free Facebook group where we can answer your questions, not 8 weeks later, like it seems to be now, or 10 weeks later, but actually pretty much same day. The other thing is, it is a secure form. We're not talking about shopping cart encryption. If you're looking for encrypted form, yes, it's not that, but it is a secure form for sure. And the other thing as well is, if you ever wanted to, you can obviously just kind of copy and paste the questions that we ask for the intake and fill them out on a Word document and email over the Word document. We've had a few people do that before. Any way that we can help, we're happy to help. So Linda, just let us know how we can help. And remember, everyone, these questions don't get read until you're up in the queue. And it's right now taking about somewhere around 8 to 10 weeks. Again, you can always get your questions answered pretty much same day at cabralsupportgroup.com for which lab should I be doing or how can I apply, any of those things. And then if it's a question about an order, then you just email simply, literally, support@drcabraldetox.com or support@equilibriumnutrition.com. However you want to is completely fine with me. All right, Philippa is up next. Hi, Dr. Cabral. I love your show, and since discovering it a couple weeks ago, I've been trying to listen to as many as I can. I've enjoyed your shows about Ayurveda, and my husband and I have started to implement a lot more Ayurvedic principles into our life. We think I am a Vata Pitta, and my husband being a Pitta Kapha. My question is about food. As I'm dominant in Vata, I know that my body needs more carbs for fuel, and I found that I do not do well on red meat. However, my husband, as a Pitta, seems to crave more protein, especially red meat. I'm not sure what foods to cook now. During the day, it is fine as we both have our own breakfast and eat lunch at work. But at night, we eat together at home. Can you recommend any kinds of meals which would work well for both of us? I do not want to end up cooking 2 meals, but want to make sure that both of us are nourishing our bodies the right way. Thank you so much. Philippa, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, of course. But here's the deal. A lot of people go through this. I've worked with people, done many, many different diets. They're doing the Candida and bacterial overgrowth protocol. They're doing no grains or, however it might be. And so there's always a way. Now, the nice thing is for the both of you, since we're not talking about eliminating anything really, we're just talking about the right foods for your body type. You want to think about a few things. So pretty much the amount of, the carbohydrate can be the same for both of you. All right. So you can both do a sweet potato, right? Like that's totally easy, right? Or if you're eating rice because you're not against rice, then you can both have rice. But the difference would be your husband would have maybe a little bit less rice and you would have a little bit more, or in terms of sweet potatoes, right? And then you would change with the seasons as well, meaning that during the wintertime, you might do more cooked vegetables, warm vegetables. And then during the summer, maybe you do a little bit more salad-based, a little less salads for you, maybe a little bit more raw food for your husband if he feels hot and he wants the cooling raw-based vegetables. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. So we just talked about that. All right, let's talk about, so we did carbs, we did our veggies, we did starches, and we did the vegetables. Now let's talk about the fat. Well, your husband is going to want a little bit more fats, okay? Coconut oil is great for that Pitta body type for the most part, not always, right? Because it can be a saturated fat and then saturated fat. And I know it's not with the palmitic acid and all of that. I know, don't come down on me for that. But the other part is this, is that, for the part of the population that doesn't do well with saturated fats, about 26% of the population, I've spoken about that before, then you won't do that, right? But maybe he does then ghee, right? And GHEE. That could be a heavier nourishing fat for his body. Maybe you just top your vegetables with a little bit of olive oil instead. But ghee is also great for the Vata body type. So you can look at it that way. Avocado can be great for both of you. So, okay, carbs can be the same. Veggies can be the same. What really is going to differ is the amount of protein and maybe the type. But I can make this even easier for you. So, for example, he doesn't necessarily need red meat at all. Or if he wants to, maybe it's just once a week or so, maybe twice. But I don't know that eating red meat that much is going to be that healthy for most humans. Again, I've looked at the studies. I don't care who's right. I don't care who's wrong. I don't judge. I look at the studies and I look at the ongoing studies. I don't know that we humans should be consuming a lot of red meat. It would seem very unnatural back in the day that we would ever be able to kill anything of a beef-based variety. That would seem pretty difficult. But let's just say somehow we were able to kill a cow in the wild. And then we would have to figure out, how do we actually bite through or tear through, and this might seem kind of vulgar, but I'm just trying to display a point, the skin of that animal? And then how would we be able to then chew up all of that meat if fire wasn't available? We weren't able to cook it before then. So again, I'm just looking at, is that like the dominant food that humans would be eating? And I'm not going to answer that for you. I actually want you to answer that, and I want you to debate all of your friends about it, but that's not necessarily for me to even answer. I want to bring up the topic, okay? So that's that on the red meat. But here's the thing, like let's just say the two of you cook a chicken, a pasture raised chicken. Okay. So you might eat a little bit more of a smaller serving and a little bit, maybe some of the white meat, a little bit of the darker meat, right? But your husband may go for more of the chicken thigh or drumstick, something like that. And the reason is that it would contain a little bit more of that fattier meat that would keep him more satiated. So I hope that makes sense. Really, what we're talking about is differing more around the protein than anything else. The both of you can eat fish. The both of you can eat vegan-based proteins if you want. Again, for a Vata, you want to make sure your beans and legumes are sprouted, that they're potentially soaked, that you really cook them well so that the Vata doesn't increase gas or air in the body. And split mung beans, which is called dal in Ayurveda or in India, is a really great one for the Vata as well, as long as it's cooked up really, really well. And typically the dal is always mixed with rice and ghee, and that's very, very nourishing for that Vata body. So hopefully that helps. Okay, Joey's up next. Hi, Dr. Ball. Good morning. First, thank you for all you do. I sent you a question on January 14th. I know you say it takes 3 to 4 weeks. It's now been 5 weeks. And I just want to make sure that you receive my email. I am attaching it below, Joey. All right. Joey, I made a special note on this question when my team just sent it in and re-asked. And your question was answered on episode 765. So the only difference was, Joey, you are correct. I used to say it would take 3 to 4 weeks. Now the community has grown. I'm always happy to be doing this. I'll be doing it for the foreseeable future, answering questions. But now it's taking about 10 weeks, right? Because you wrote in January 14th, right? And then I answered it on episode 765 about 10 weeks later, right? So it's taking about a little over 2 months, 2.5 months. I wish it could be faster. It's just we have a lot of questions coming in and I just answer them in the order they come in. So just make sure you're checking in every house call, like literally every house call. And you wrote in and I answered your question, which was on the mystery jitteriness. I always kind of come up with a fun little name for the headline. It keeps my work interesting. So Joey, your question was answered there, 765, all right? Marissa is up next. I'm a 34-year-old female, and for over 10 years, I regularly get cystic, painful breakouts around my mouth during ovulation, and sometimes just before my period. My period was always regular. I then became pregnant and started breastfeeding, and my breakouts disappeared, and I got my complexion back. My baby is now 8 months old. I've started to wean her, and my breakouts have returned, although my period hasn't come back yet. My blood sugar is within the normal range, but at the higher end. Could there be a testosterone link? My body type is slim and slender. I've never had a diet, always been slim, but I do have a sweet tooth. Otherwise, my diet is healthy. I suffer from constipation. Thank you so much. Marissa, again, I wish I could get these questions to you so much faster because I know what this is. This is a clear estrogen-based issue. Clear as day. I want to explain. So if you're a practitioner out there, you'll understand how I got to that. And Marissa, this will give you your answer. Okay. You get breakouts during ovulation. All right. So we're looking at ovulation, a couple weeks into the cycle, estrogen's at its peak. Okay, breakouts come out. Now, it starts to get a little bit better. when progesterone what? Increases, and estrogen what? Decreases. Okay. And then you get it right before your period, which what happens at that point? Progesterone drops out of the sky, especially if there's an issue with lowered progesterone. And then estrogen looks dominant. Estrogen's not high, it's just back in ratio. So now estrogen's the top dog, right? So then you get the acne again. Now, it went away when you were pregnant and breastfeeding because estrogen was staying a little lower. Progesterone levels, well, they were just more level, right? Because your hormones were different, because your body was saying, okay, we can't get pregnant, because that's essentially how the female body was also created, which is a great thing. So you wouldn't get pregnant right away while you were still nursing your child that was just born. So now that you're weaning off from nursing your baby, the estrogen levels are returning back to what they used to be, and progesterone has not come back up, which I see all the time in my practice. So what do? We run what's called a thyroid hormone adrenal panel. It lets us look at the thyroid. It looks at estrogen to progesterone. Okay. If you haven't got your period yet, I don't see if it says that you got it yet or not. I believe it says that your period hasn't come back. Okay. So you can run this anytime. We'll be able to see if there is estrogen dominance. So we'll be able to help with that. Then we'll look at your cortisol levels to see if that has anything to do with your estrogen and progesterone. And probably does, because you have an 8-month-old, right? So that's for sure. Then it will look at your hemoglobin A1C and your insulin levels for the blood sugar. We'll look at your testosterone as well. I just don't think it's a clear testosterone issue. I think it's an estrogen issue, because I see this like 1,000 times. So Marissa, that's the lab I would run. We'll link it up today at the show notes. Just go to StephenCabral.com/828. Any fertility-based issues, run the thyroid, hormone, adrenal. Any menstrual cycle-based issues, any acne issues around the jawline or the chin, run the thyroid, hormone, adrenal. I can't recommend that lab enough. It is literally the first lab I ran when I was looking to get well. And I met that functional medicine practitioner way back in the day. And he's told me about something called my adrenal glands. I had no idea what he was talking about. I was like, adrenal glands? I don't know if I have those. And then he ran that lab, and I'm like, oh, wow. I'm like, look at that. I'm not producing any cortisol. So it's a great lab. I'm just fortunate enough to now be able to pay it forward and literally recommend and offer that lab to others anywhere in the world, pretty much. All right. Hopefully that was helpful, and I'll link it up at StephenCabral.com/828. Jeff's up next. Hi, Dr. Cabral. A friend of mine has been diagnosed with Marfan syndrome. His doctor told him I cannot lift weights or even more heavy furniture. I was wondering if you have any insight into the condition. My concerns are the effects of a lifetime of not being able to step in a gym will have on him down the road. So, Jeff, I've never actually seen that anyone with Marfan syndrome can't pick up anything heavy. You'd have to get deeper into that. You really would. So Marfan syndrome, for those who don't know, and I hope that I'm always catching myself, that I know everyone obviously is not a health practitioner listening to this. No, by far, more than 75%, so about 25% are all health practitioners, and about 75% are, people looking for good health advice. So let me always try to explain what all of these different things are. So Marfan syndrome is essentially the easiest way we look for laxity of the joints. We look for elongated fingers. We look for elongated hands, toes, and it's also dealing with the connective tissues. So a lot of times that's what we're talking about. It could be a little bit more lax, meaning like almost like very flexible joints or double jointed. Sometimes people do have issues with eyesight and heart-based issues and scoliosis, but not always. And people with Marfan syndrome have a normal life expectancy. So what we're really talking about are the build of the body, oftentimes very tall, very thin, very vata, very ectomorph. So for the most part, more of the people are more of the vata-based dosha. However, what I like to look at is, yes, there's more hypermobility and flexibility of the joints. So you have to be careful when you're lifting weights, for sure. I don't disagree with that at all. And I'm not going against the doctor's advice, because I'm not that person's doctor. But what I'm saying is get a second opinion, because a lot of people with Marfans want to be able to strengthen all the muscles that support those joints. So if the wrists are already very lax, meaning that they're very pliable, mobile, flexible, we'd want to make sure that the forearms and the forearm extensors and the forearm flexors and all the muscles are strong enough that we don't allow for the hypermobility, that we can pull back if we do go to pick something up. So what I'm saying is that people have to live a normal life. I want them to train in the gym doing normal exercises. So when they're outside of the gym, they can do those things and live a long, healthy life and not get injured. That's always been my philosophy, is that we have to live here as humans. Like, we have to be able to do our best to make this vessel, which is our body, carry us through the lifetime for the greatest amount of essentially quality of life. And so that it doesn't break down. So my advice would be get a second opinion. Say, can I work with a qualified exercise physiologist or personal trainer or athletic trainer or whoever it might be, physical therapist, and be on a program that's going to allow me to do squats and deadlifts and step-ups and lunges. Why? Because those are things I have to do in normal life. And then can I do some presses and pulls? Because those are things I have to do in normal life. And even a couple curls, because what? You're going to pick up luggage. You're going to pick up grocery bags. If you have to do that anyways, make your body strong so that your elbow doesn't hyperextend, so that your wrist isn't weak, that you can actually pull those forearm flexors towards your bicep and be able to curl that bag or pick up that thing. So I'm all about functional training. And again, with a qualified professional, just, make sure they are, that person should be good to go. Truly believe that. Jeff, great question. That is our time today. So thank you everyone for writing in. Of course, each and every weekend, I'll be answering your questions. It's a great privilege of mine to be able to do that. And if you ever do want same day questions, pretty much Monday through Friday, just write in by joining our Facebook group at cabralsupportgroup.com. Completely free group. You can go right in there. You can ask your question to our amazing health coaches. And of course, remember, if they ever don't know the answer, because we haven't got the question before, they text me, they email me, they get in touch with me. I answer the question and they post it in the group. So don't ever think that your question is not being reviewed by me. It is, because if it's never come up before, I personally answer it myself. So you're going to be getting those answers. It's just the Cabral HouseCalls on the weekend. We'll get to about 10 calls to 20 calls, I would say maximum per weekend. So if we get 80 people to write in, right, anywhere around there, anywhere from 40 to 80, that's the amount of questions I can answer in a given month. And then as they build up, obviously, everyone will just be put in the queue. Hopefully that makes sense. If there's a better way to do this, I'm always all ears. So let me know on Instagram. That's where I literally read all the different comments and how I'm able to just kind of give back as best I can. Hope you're having an amazing weekend. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if this was helpful, if you could leave a review on iTunes, literally just go to the Cabral Concept. And if you could leave a review on iTunes, I read every single one. They mean so much to me. And really, I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Take care. I'll speak with you tomorrow on our Mindset and Motivation Monday. I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.